For years, the iPad mini has been treated like the forgotten middle child of the Apple ecosystem. You pay a premium price, but you get stuck with a jelly-scrolling LCD, chunky bezels, and specs that feel a generation behind the flagship lineup. But if the latest supply chain leaks are accurate, Cupertino is about to flip the tablet market upside down with a device no one expected to get the Pro treatment this soon. Stop waiting for the giant M4 iPad Pro to drop in price, because the new iPad mini 8 is getting a massive overhaul that makes it the most fascinating product in Apple's upcoming pipeline. We are talking about a full-blown Pro-level glow-up crammed into an 8-inch chassis. Let's talk about the display first because this is where things get genuinely insane. According to display analyst Ross Young, and heavily corroborated by reports from the ELEC out of Korea, the iPad mini 8 is officially making the jump to OLED. Now, whether this is the hyper-expensive dual-layer tandem OLED from the current Pro models or a highly optimized single-stack panel remains a hot debate in the rumor mill. But honestly, I'll believe it when I see it if they go tandem. Either way, this is a massive win for the consumer. You are finally getting those perfect infinite black levels, blinding HDR peak brightness, and absolutely zero blooming when watching movies in a dark room. More importantly, an OLED panel completely eliminates the dreaded jelly scroll issue that completely ruined the iPad mini 6 for a lot of hardcore users. The pixel response times on OLED are nearly instantaneous, which means no more laggy, slanted text when scrolling through web pages. It is about time Apple fixed this. But they are not just swapping the panel and calling it a day. Ming-Chi Kuo has hinted at some very aggressive chassis redesigns, and sources over at DG Times are echoing this exact sentiment. They are apparently shaving down those infamously thick bezels, pushing the screen real estate from the old 8.3 inches to almost 8.7 inches. And they are pulling this off without increasing the physical footprint of the tablet. That keeps it perfectly palm-sized, maintaining its legendary status as the ultimate daily driver for reading on the couch or aggressive mobile gaming. But thinner bezels create a massive engineering headache. Where do you hide the front-facing camera, the ambient light sensor, and the microphones? This is where a wild rumor from Shrimp Apple Pro comes into play. Word on the street is that Apple is testing a dynamic island cutout specifically optimized for the iPad mini. Wait, really? A dynamic island on an iPad? It feels a little weird for a tablet interface, but if they are trying to maximize that screen-to-body ratio without using an ugly notch, it might literally be their only option to house the Face ID sensors. Oh yeah, expect Face ID to finally replace the Touch ID power button, bringing the mini in line with the true premium devices. And if you think the screen changes are wild, the audio situation is straight out of a science fiction movie. Reports originating from Makotakra suggest Apple is ditching traditional speaker grills entirely on the next mini. Instead, they are experimenting with a highly advanced vibration-based acoustic system. The entire metal chassis of the iPad mini would act as the speaker membrane, vibrating to produce high-fidelity sound. By removing those physical speaker holes, Apple instantly solves a huge durability problem. This could very well pave the way for the very first IP-rated, fully water-resistant iPad mini. Imagine taking your tablet to the beach, or the pool, or reading in the tub without having a panic attack every time somebody splashes a few drops of water near it. That single feature alone sells the device for a lot of people. Now let's look under the hood, because the silicon choice here is baffling in the best way possible. Mark Gurman has been relentlessly pointing out that Apple is leaning heavily into on-device artificial intelligence, and the iPad mini is apparently getting the royal treatment to support this new software wave. We are talking about the A19 Pro chip. Yes, the exact same top-tier silicon slated for the upcoming iPhone 17 Pro. The TSMC 3nm yields are reportedly looking fantastic right now, allowing Apple to put desktop-class compute power into this ridiculously tiny footprint. My biggest concern here is thermal throttling. Packing an A19 Pro into a device this thin without any active cooling fans? That chip is going to run incredibly hot under heavy loads. But if anyone can magically manage that heat dissipation through clever internal geometry, it is the Apple hardware team. But the processor is not even the craziest part of this leak. The supply chain chatter suggests this little beast is getting packed with 12 gigabytes of RAM. Let that sink in for a second. For a company notoriously stingy with memory upgrades, slapping 12 gigs into a non-Pro branded tablet is practically unheard of. Why the sudden generosity? 2 words. Apple Intelligence. They desperately need massive amounts of memory overhead for local, on-device AI processing without relying heavily on slow cloud servers. This means seamless integration of AI writing tools, deeply advanced Siri capabilities that actually understand context, and lightning-fast image generation, all running natively on the Metal without lag. Think about what an A19 Pro chip and 12 gigs of RAM means for gaming alone. You are looking at hardware-accelerated ray tracing and buttery smooth frame rates on huge AAA titles like Death Stranding or Resident Evil, all running natively on an 8.7-inch OLED screen. It essentially turns the iPad mini into the most premium, overpowered handheld gaming console on the planet. Forget the Nintendo Switch or even the Steam Deck, the raw compute performance of this 3nm architecture is going to make them look like ancient toys. And with 12 gigs of RAM, I would not be shocked if Apple finally unlocks full Stage Manager support for the external display on the Mini. You could plug this tiny slab of glass into a giant studio display, pair a wireless Magic Keyboard, and suddenly you have a complete desktop workstation powered by the same flagship silicon running their best phones. That level of extreme versatility is entirely unmatched in the current tech space. Of course, all this pro-grade hardware brings us squarely to the elephant in the room: the price. You did not think Apple was going to just hand you a stunning OLED panel, 12 gigs of RAM, and an A19 Pro chip out of the goodness of their hearts, did you? Prepare yourself for the inevitable Apple tax. Supply chain analysts are currently projecting a base price hike up to $599. They might try to soften the blow by doubling the standard base storage to 256 gigabytes, which would honestly make that bitter pill a little easier to swallow. But we have to look at the harsh reality of Apple's pricing ladder. At $599, you are dangerously close to refurbished iPad Pro territory, or even a brand new M2 iPad Air. This creates a really fascinating buyer's dilemma. But I have to ask you guys, are you actually willing to pay $600 for an iPad mini? Or is that pushing it too far for what is essentially a secondary companion device? Let me know down in the comments because I am genuinely torn on this one. If you want the ultimate compact powerhouse, this seems like an absolute dream machine. But the premium tablet space is getting incredibly crowded and incredibly expensive. We will have to wait for the next Apple event to see if Cupertino actually pulls the trigger on all these insane upgrades. But the rumor mill is definitely pointing toward a massive paradigm shift.